Subscribe now and hit the like button. If you believe in unexpected connections, comment below. What's the most surprising call you've ever received? The billionaire's desperation and the nurse's compassion. "Why won't your daughter stop crying?" the man in the elegant suit demanded, adjusting his tie impatiently, his gaze fixed on the little girl wailing uncontrollably. Evelyn Davies squeezed her lips together, feeling the reproachful stares of the other aeroplane passengers. Her daughter, Lily, barely 18 months old, had been crying non-stop for 10 minutes since the turbulence began. "I'm so sorry," she murmured, rocking her desperately. She's not usually like this, but she's scared of planes. The man sighed, and Evelyn braced herself for another dismissive comment, like the ones she'd already received from the woman in the seat in front, who kept rolling her eyes every time Lily let out a cry. However, to her surprise, the man leaned towards them with a softer expression. "I can try something. I have nieces," he said, and without waiting for a reply, he pulled a small wooden puzzle from his briefcase. "Hello, little one. Look what I have here." Lily's crying stopped almost instantly, her blue eyes fixing on the colorful toy the stranger moved in front of her. "What's her name, princess?" he asked in a warm voice. "Lily," Evelyn replied, surprised by the change. "But she doesn't talk much yet." "Lily is a very pretty name," he smiled, handing a puzzle piece to the child, who took it with her chubby fingers. "I'm Richard." For the first time since they'd boarded the flight to Manchester, Evelyn could breathe easily. She watched her daughter, now completely focused on the wooden pieces, and then the man who had introduced himself as Richard. Tall, with dark brown hair, perfectly styled, and a tailored suit, he didn't seem like the type of person who'd bother helping a struggling single mother. "Thank you," she said sincerely. "I didn't expect anyone to want to help." "Not everyone's a monster," he completed with a smile. "Though sometimes it seems like it, especially in business class." Evelyn blushed. It was true she'd noticed the expensive suits and superior glances of those around them. "I'm Evelyn," she introduced herself, extending her free hand. "And truly, thank you so much. This journey isn't easy." "First time traveling together?" "Yes. We're going to Manchester to visit my sister." She hesitated for a moment. "I'm starting over." Richard nodded, as if he perfectly understood what those words concealed. For the next hour, while Lily played with the puzzle, they conversed with surprising ease. He told her he was traveling for work. She told him about her profession as a primary school teacher in Sheffield. Somehow, the initial awkwardness transformed into a pleasant chat between two strangers. When the plane began its descent, Richard put away the toy and pulled a business card from his wallet. "If you need anything during your stay in Manchester, don't hesitate to call me," he offered, handing her the card. "I know the city well." Evelyn took the card out of politeness, though she was sure she'd never use it. What could she have in common with this obviously wealthy man? "Thanks again for your help with Lily," she said, putting the card in her bag. "You saved my trip." The plane landed smoothly, and passengers began to prepare for disembarkation. As she gathered her things and settled Lily into her car seat, Evelyn overheard two flight attendants talking in hushed tones nearby. "Did you see who was traveling today?" "Richard Thorne, the CEO of Nova Horizon Technologies," one whispered. "They say he's one of the richest businessmen in the UK. The guy who revolutionized educational technology," the other replied. "I can't believe he traveled on a commercial flight. My sister uses his apps at the school where she works." Evelyn froze, discreetly glancing at Richard, who was now retrieving his briefcase from the overhead compartment. The kind stranger who had played with her daughter throughout the flight was a famous billionaire? Suddenly aware of her simple clothes and disheveled hair, she felt her cheeks burn. Richard turned to her and gave her one last smile. "It was a pleasure to meet you both, Evelyn and Lily. I hope you have a good stay in Manchester." With these words, he walked away down the aisle, leaving Evelyn contemplating the card in her bag with a mixture of astonishment and disbelief. A billionaire. She'd spent 2 hours talking to one of the richest men in the UK as if he were a normal person. How ironic, she thought as she cuddled Lily against her chest. Of all the seats on this plane, I got next to the only rich man who cares about a single mum with a crying child. What Evelyn couldn't imagine was that this casual encounter was just the beginning of something much bigger that fate had prepared for them. What would you do if you found out the kind stranger who helped you was a billionaire? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more unexpected turns. A crisis and a call, too. Weeks had passed since their arrival in Manchester. Evelyn had settled into her sister Chloe's small flat in a middle-class neighborhood. Against all odds, she had secured a temporary position as a substitute teacher at a nearby school, while Lily spent her mornings at a nursery. Life seemed to be slowly getting back on track until that rainy Thursday afternoon. "She's burning up," Evelyn murmured, touching Lily's forehead for the 3rd time in less than an hour. The child, normally active and cheerful, lay listlessly in bed, her cheeks flushed and her breathing ragged. The digital thermometer read 39.5 degrees Celsius, and nothing Evelyn had tried seemed to bring the fever down. "Calm down, my love. Everything will be all right," she whispered as she frantically searched for her sister's number on her phone. Chloe's phone went straight to voicemail. Great! Just my luck she had that meeting today where she couldn't be interrupted, Evelyn thought with frustration. Without a car and in a neighborhood she barely knew, panic began to set in. She picked Lily up, wrapped her in a light blanket, and stepped out onto the street in the torrential rain. She struggled to hail a taxi. "To the nearest hospital, please. My daughter has a very high fever." 20 minutes later, drenched and with Lily burning against her chest, Evelyn found herself at the admissions desk of a private clinic. "I'm sorry, madam, but your insurance doesn't have coverage at this center," the receptionist explained with an impassive expression. "We can treat her, but you'd have to pay the full emergency consultation, plus tests and medication." Evelyn felt the floor sway beneath her feet. She had verified which hospitals accepted her basic insurance. "How much would it be?" she asked in a thin voice. The amount the receptionist quoted made her stomach clench. It was practically everything she had brought for the entire month. With trembling hands, she rummaged in her bag. Among nappies and wet wipes, her fingers touched a piece of cardstock, Richard Thorne's business card. "If you need anything," he had said. She never would have imagined having to use that number, but Lily's burning forehead against her neck left no room for pride. She stepped away from the counter, and with her heart pounding, dialed the number. She expected a secretary to answer, or for it to go straight to voicemail. To her surprise, after 3 rings, Richard's deep, calm voice resonated on the other end of the line. "Richard Thorne. Hello, it's Evelyn. Evelyn Davies. From the plane, with my daughter Lily," she stammered, suddenly aware of the absurdity of the situation. "You probably don't remember me." "Evelyn, of course I remember you," he interrupted, his voice conveying a smile. "How are you, and the little princess?" The question made the tears she'd been holding back finally overflow. "Not good. Lily has a very high fever, and I'm in a hospital that doesn't accept my insurance, and I don't know what to do." The words tumbled out. "Sorry for bothering you, but I don't know anyone else here, and you said, 'Which hospital are you at?'" he asked, his tone suddenly serious and decisive. Evelyn gave him the clinic's name, surprised by the change in his voice. "Stay exactly where you are. I'll talk to the hospital, and I'll be there in 20 minutes. But, no buts. Everything will be fine, Evelyn." The call ended before she could reply. Confused, she returned to the receptionist, who was now talking on the phone with a surprised expression. After a few moments, the woman hung up and looked at Evelyn with wide eyes. "Mrs. Davies, please follow me. Dr. Stone will see her immediately." "But my insurance—" "Don't worry about that now. Everything's arranged." In less than 10 minutes, Lily was being examined by a pediatrician in a private room. By the time the initial tests were finished, the door opened, and Richard walked in. His impeccable suit, slightly damp from the rain. "How is she?" he asked directly, approaching the bed where Lily lay with a cool cloth on her forehead. "It appears to be a common virus," the doctor explained. "Nothing serious, but we need to control the fever. We've given her an antipyretic, and she's already responding well." Evelyn watched the scene as if it were unreal. The pediatrician spoke to Richard as if he knew him, and he nodded with an expression of genuine concern as he looked at Lily. When the doctor left, an awkward silence filled the room. "How did you do all this so quickly?" Evelyn finally asked. Richard shrugged with a shy smile. "Let's just say I know people. The important thing is that Lily will be fine." "I can't pay you for this," she said directly, "and I don't want your charity." Richard looked at her with an intensity that made her feel vulnerable. "It's not charity, Evelyn. Sometimes people appear in our lives for a reason," he replied simply. "Let's let Lily recover, and then we'll talk about everything else. Shall we?" Against all logic, Evelyn nodded. As she watched Richard approach Lily and gently stroke her hair, a strange feeling came over her. For the first time since Paul abandoned her upon learning of her pregnancy, she felt she wasn't completely alone. What do you think is Richard's true motivation for helping Evelyn? Is it just kindness or something more? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more intriguing connections. A new rhythm. 3 hours later, with Lily peacefully asleep and her fever under control, Richard drove them both back to Chloe's flat. The rain had stopped, leaving behind a surprisingly clear night sky. "Why did you help us?" Evelyn asked, as the car pulled up to the building. "You barely know us." Richard remained silent for a moment, as if searching for the right words. "Sometimes, in the midst of all the noise that is my life, something genuine appears, and I just know I have to pay attention to it," he finally replied, looking into her eyes. "You two are that something genuine, Evelyn." For an instant, the world seemed to stop. Then Lily stirred in her mother's arms, breaking the moment. "Thank you," Evelyn said sincerely. "Truly." "Don't thank me yet," he smiled. "Now that I know Lily is better, I plan to kidnap both of you this weekend, to show you the best playground in Manchester. If you agree, of course." Against all odds and all her defenses, Evelyn found herself smiling. "I think we could agree to that." Over the next few weeks, Richard became a constant presence in Evelyn and Lily's lives. What started as a weekend trip to the park transformed into visits to the zoo, lunches at child-friendly restaurants, and quiet afternoons in Heaton Park. To Evelyn's surprise, Richard never flaunted his wealth. He drove a comfortable but modest car, dressed elegantly, but without ostentatious brands, and always chose places where she felt at ease. If it weren't for the card she kept in her bag and the occasional looks of recognition he received in some restaurants, she could almost forget who he really was. "Where are we going today?" Evelyn asked one Saturday morning as she watched Richard play with Lily in the living room of the flat. The child now recognized him and reached out her little arms to him every time he arrived. "I was thinking of something different," he replied, picking Lily up. "Would you like to see a community garden project my foundation supports?" "Your foundation?" Evelyn asked, raising an eyebrow. "There's a lot I don't know about you, isn't there?" Richard smiled somewhat shyly. "It's not something I usually mention. I prefer people to know me for who I am, not for what I have." Something in his tone made Evelyn feel a pang of guilt. During these weeks, she had maintained a certain emotional distance, convinced that Richard's interest was fleeting, perhaps a temporary act of charity towards a struggling single mother. But every day they spent together, this theory became harder to sustain. The community garden turned out to be a transformed space in the middle of one of Manchester's poorer neighborhoods. Children of all ages ran around among vegetable patches and flowers, while adults worked the soil under the morning sun. "We started 3 years ago," Richard explained as they walked among the allotments. "We turned an abandoned plot into this space. Now it feeds over 50 families and serves as an outdoor classroom for 3 local schools." Evelyn watched in amazement as everyone greeted Richard by name, not with the reverence one would expect towards someone in his position, but with genuine affection for someone who had earned their respect. While Lily played with other children in an area designated for toddlers, Richard and Evelyn set about planting tomato seeds in a freshly prepared plot. "Why have you never told me about your company?" Evelyn finally asked, burying her hands in the fresh soil. Richard paused his work thoughtfully. "When people find out about my wealth, everything changes," he replied sincerely. "They either want something from me, or they put me on a pedestal. With you, I'm just Richard." Their hands brushed as they placed the seeds, and Evelyn felt a strange tingle run up her arm. The moment was interrupted by a familiar voice that sent a chill down Evelyn's spine. "Evelyn, is that you?" Looking up, she found herself face to face with Paul, her ex-partner and Lily's father, accompanied by a pregnant woman who was holding his arm. It had been almost 2 years since she last saw him, when he'd shouted that he wanted nothing to do with the baby she was expecting. "Paul," was all she could say, feeling her legs go weak. Richard immediately noticed her change in demeanor and stood up, subtly placing himself between her and the newcomer. "Do you know each other?" he asked in a casual but firm tone. "We're old friends," Paul replied with an uncomfortable smile, avoiding looking directly at Evelyn. "I didn't know you were in Manchester." "As you can see," she replied dryly. "Life brings surprises." Her eyes flickered to the pregnant woman, then to the play area where Lily was laughing with other children. Paul followed her gaze and paled slightly as he recognized the child. "Well, it was interesting seeing you," he said quickly, tugging on his companion's arm. "We were just leaving." As they walked away, Evelyn felt her legs could no longer support her. Richard guided her to a nearby bench and sat beside her in silence, patiently waiting for her to speak. "He's Lily's father," she finally explained, her voice trembling. "He left me when he found out I was pregnant. He said he wasn't ready to be a father, that it would ruin his career. And now he's expecting another child." "I'm sorry," Richard murmured. Evelyn wiped away a rebellious tear. "It's not about him. I stopped loving him a long time ago. It's just that, to see how happy he seems now, when he abandoned Lily without looking back." Richard took her hands in his. "Some people don't value what they have until they lose it. Others never learn. But you, Evelyn, you're stronger than you think. You've built a life for yourself and for Lily without his help." Something in the way he looked at her, with that mixture of admiration and tenderness, made Evelyn feel suddenly vulnerable. "And you?" she asked, wanting to shift the attention from herself. "Do you have any sad stories to share? It's your turn." Richard smiled melancholically. "I was orphaned very young. My grandmother raised me and taught me that wealth means nothing without human connection." He paused. "Ironically, now I'm surrounded by people who see my bank account, not my heart." The sincerity of his confession took Evelyn by surprise. Suddenly, the powerful and confident man seemed as vulnerable as she was, both marked by different forms of abandonment and loneliness. At that moment, Lily ran towards them, her little hands full of wildflowers that she proudly offered to both of them. "Mine!" she exclaimed, her version of her own name, one of the few words she could already say. Richard picked her up, making her laugh with tickles. "You're an excellent gardener, Princess," he told her, placing one of the flowers behind Evelyn's ear. just like your mum." The gesture, so simple and natural, awakened feelings in Evelyn that she had kept dormant for a long time. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a future where she wasn't alone, where someone shared with her both the joys and the burdens of life, and that terrified her. What do you think will happen now that Paul has reappeared? Will Evelyn finally open her heart to Richard? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for the unfolding drama. A crisis of trust. As the weeks passed, Richard became a constant in Lily's life. He taught her English words, celebrated every new milestone the little one achieved, and seemed genuinely fascinated by her development. For Evelyn, seeing them together was a sweet torture, the perfect image of what she had never had, of what she feared losing if she allowed herself to believe in it. One afternoon, while reviewing documents for her work at the school, Evelyn received an email that froze her. It was the confirmation of her permanent appointment as a teacher at the school where she had been working temporarily, along with notification of a full scholarship for her curriculum development program. At first, joy flooded her. Then a detail caught her attention. The scholarship came from the Nova Horizon Education Foundation, Richard's foundation. Her mind began to connect the dots, the position that, coincidentally, the headmistress had so easily secured for her after a single interview, the special resources for her classroom. She felt foolish. All this time she had believed she was forging her own path, when in reality Richard had been pulling strings from the shadows, treating her like a charity case. With her heart pounding in her chest and trembling hands, she grabbed her phone and called Richard. "I need to see you," she said as soon as he answered, her voice icy. 2 hours later, with Lily left in Chloe's care, Evelyn waited in a nearby cafe. When Richard entered, his smile vanished when he saw her expression. "What's wrong?" he asked, sitting opposite her. Evelyn slid the printout of the email across the table. "Were you ever going to tell me? Or were you just going to keep manipulating my life from the shadows?" Richard looked at the paper and closed his eyes briefly. "Evelyn, I can explain." "Explain what? That you've been treating me like a charity project? That nothing I've achieved here is really mine?" "It's not like that," he insisted. "I just wanted—" "I don't need your pity or your money," she interrupted, standing up. "I'm not a social case you can fix with your fortune." "I've never seen you like this." Richard's voice broke slightly. "What I feel for you and Lily has nothing to do with money." "No? Then tell me, why didn't you let me find my own way? Why did you have to make sure I was another person dependent on the greatness of Richard Thorne?" The words came out harsher than she intended, but fear dominated her. Fear of dependence. Fear that everything she felt was built on a lie. Richard looked at her with a mixture of pain and frustration. "Because I love you," he said simply. "And I believed that helping you achieve what you deserve with your talent was the right way to show it." The silence that followed his confession was deafening. Evelyn felt the world sway beneath her feet. "I'm sorry, but I can't do this," she finally murmured. "I don't want to see you anymore." And before her resolve faltered, before the tears threatening to surface betrayed her, she turned and hurried out of the cafe, leaving Richard motionless, his words of love still floating between them like a broken promise. Do you think Evelyn was too harsh, or was her reaction justified? What would you do in her shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for the intense drama. A call from the heart. A month passed like a gray mist. Evelyn immersed herself in her work at the school, determined to prove that she deserved the position on her own merits, not through Richard's intervention. She dedicated her mornings to her students and her afternoons to Lily, filling every minute of the day to avoid thinking about him. But the nights were different. In the silence of her room, doubts assailed her. Had she been too harsh? What if his intentions had truly been good? The memory of his pained expression when she rejected him returned again and again, mixed with the image of Lily asking, "Uncle Richard?" almost every morning. "She'll get over it," Chloe reassured her one night, as they watched Lily sleep. "Children forget quickly." "But I don't," Evelyn confessed in a whisper. "Sometimes I think I made a mistake." Her sister looked at her with understanding. "Out of pride or fear?" she asked directly. "Because since you met him, it was the first time I saw you truly smile since Paul." Evelyn didn't respond. She couldn't explain that her rejection hadn't just been out of wounded pride, but out of terror of repeating history. Falling in love with someone who would eventually see her as a burden and abandon her. This time breaking not only her heart, but Lily's too. Meanwhile, miles away, in a minimalist penthouse overlooking the city, Richard Thorne spent his days immersed in work. New educational initiatives, funding programs for schools in disadvantaged areas, development of learning apps for children with disabilities. Anything that kept his mind busy and away from the memories of Evelyn and Lily. "It's the third night this week you've stayed late," Teresa, his assistant and longtime friend, commented one night, finding Richard still in his office at 10 p.m. "It's not healthy. You look like a zombie." "I'm fine," he replied automatically, without looking up from his computer. "No, you're not," she insisted, closing the laptop in front of him. "You've built schools all over the world, but you're failing the most important lesson, fighting for what you love." Richard looked at her with irritation. "She made it very clear she doesn't want to see me. And since when does the great Richard Thorne give up so easily?" Teresa pressed. "The man who transformed educational technology in the UK, defeated by his first rejection?" Her words struck something deep within Richard. It was true, he had never been one to give up in the face of obstacles. But this was different. It wasn't about business or projects, but about real emotions, about vulnerabilities he had never faced before. "I don't know how to fix it," he finally admitted. Teresa smiled. "By starting with listening, not solving," she replied wisely. "That's what you've always done wrong. You think money and power can solve any problem. But some people don't need solutions, just understanding." The weeks continued to pass. The school where Evelyn worked suddenly announced budget cuts that threatened to eliminate the arts program she had helped develop. "It's a real shame," the headmistress commented during an emergency meeting. "Without those funds, we'll have to cut the entire program." "There must be some way to save it," Evelyn insisted, thinking of the children who had blossomed thanks to those classes. "What if we look for external sponsors?" The idea seemed to light up the headmistress's face. "Excellent idea. We could apply for funding from private companies." Indeed, she rummaged through her papers. "Here, I have a call for proposals from Nova Horizon Technologies for innovative educational projects." Evelyn felt her stomach twist, hearing the name of Richard's company. "Perhaps we should consider other options," she suggested weakly. "Impossible. This is the best opportunity," the headmistress replied. "And since you developed the program, you're the ideal person to present the proposal." With no way to refuse without raising suspicion, Evelyn found herself caught in a situation she had tried to avoid at all costs. Crossing paths with Richard Thorne again. A week later, with a meticulously prepared presentation and her heart pounding, Evelyn entered the imposing building of Nova Horizon Technologies. As she ascended in the lift to the conference room, she mentally rehearsed what she would say if she met him. She would be professional, distant, focusing solely on the arts program and nothing else. The lift doors opened, and Evelyn was led to a spacious boardroom where several executives waited, seated around an oval table. At the back, standing by the window and with his back to her, was a figure she recognized instantly. Richard turned when the secretary announced her arrival, and their gazes met across the room. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Evelyn noticed he looked thinner, with slight shadows under his eyes, but his presence was still magnetic. "Good morning, Mrs. Davies," he greeted formally, as if they had never shared anything but a professional relationship. "We're eager to hear your proposal." With trembling knees but a firm voice, Evelyn began her presentation on the importance of arts in holistic education. She spoke passionately about how the program had helped children with learning difficulties express themselves, develop confidence, and improve in other subjects. Throughout the presentation, she avoided looking directly at Richard, but she could feel his intense gaze, following her every move. When she finished, the executives politely applauded and began to ask technical questions, which Evelyn answered confidently. "The funding is approved," Richard finally announced, surprising everyone in the room. "The program perfectly meets our foundation's objectives of promoting a more inclusive and complete education." The executives exchanged confused glances at the speed of the decision, but no one dared to question the CEO. When the meeting ended and the other executives left, Richard approached Evelyn, who was gathering her documents with slightly trembling hands. "The funding is secured, regardless of our past," he assured her quietly. "Your program deserves it on its own merits." Evelyn finally looked him in the eyes. "Our past was never about money," she replied in the same tone. "It was about trust." "I know," he admitted, "and I was wrong to try to fix your problems instead of asking you what you really needed." A silence laden with unspoken words settled between them. "How's Lily?" Richard finally asked, his voice soft. "She misses you," Evelyn replied honestly. "She asks about you." The pain that crossed Richard's face was almost physical. "I miss them too, both of you." Evelyn found herself on the edge of an emotional precipice. Part of her wanted to take the leap, to risk trusting again. Another part, the one that had been hurt before, kept her firmly on safe ground. "The program will start in 2 weeks," she finally said, backing towards the door. "You'll receive monthly progress reports." "Evelyn," Richard stopped her as she was turning the doorknob. "The barrier between us isn't my wealth. It's our fear. Yours of depending on someone who might abandon you, and mine of being valued only for what I can give, not for who I am." The precision with which he had identified her deepest fears left her speechless. Unable to respond, Evelyn quickly left the room, carrying with her the certainty that, no matter how much she tried to deny it, what was between them was much deeper and more real than she wanted to admit. What do you think will happen now that their deepest fears have been laid bare? Can they overcome their past pain? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for the ultimate emotional turning point. Rebuilding bridges, separated once again, both understood that the physical distance was nothing compared to the emotional distance they themselves had created, built on past scars and fears about a future neither dared to imagine together. 6 months passed, each marking the rhythm of 2 lives that, though separated, seemed to move in unconscious synchronicity. Evelyn had dedicated herself completely to her arts program. Under her direction, the initiative had expanded from a simple painting class to a comprehensive approach that combined visual arts, music, and drama as tools to improve learning in all subjects. The monthly reports she sent to Nova Horizon were rigorous and professional, without a single personal mention. With each report that arrived on his desk, Richard felt a mixture of pride and melancholy. He could see Evelyn's talent reflected on every page. Her passion for education was evident in the children's results. Sometimes, between lines of data and statistics, he thought he perceived hidden messages, as if she were speaking to him through her work. Richard, for his part, had redirected a large part of his company's work towards educational initiatives. He launched a free platform for educational content for underprivileged schools and established a scholarship program for innovative teachers. Although no one in his close circle dared to mention it, Everyone knew that these projects had a clear origin. A primary school teacher from Sheffield who had left an indelible mark on his life. "It's the third night this week you've stayed late," Teresa commented one night, finding Richard still in his office at 10 p.m. "It's not healthy. I'm just reviewing the progress of the arts program at New Dawn School," he replied, without looking up. Teresa sighed. "Evelyn's program," she clarified. "Why don't you just call her?" "Because I respect her decision," he replied dryly. "Respecting her decision doesn't mean giving up," Teresa insisted. "Decisions can be reconsidered when circumstances change." Richard finally looked away from the screen. "What circumstances have changed?" "You've changed," she simply replied, "and I bet she has too." Meanwhile, in the small flat she now shared with Lily, Evelyn checked her email before bed. Among work messages and promotions, a name caught her attention: Paul Davies. Her pulse quickened as she opened the message. "Evelyn, I've been thinking a lot about Lily lately. I know I have no right to ask you for anything, but I'd like to meet her. My son, Oscar, was born 3 months ago, and he's made me realize a lot of things. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just ask for the opportunity to be part of my daughter's life, even minimally." Paul. Emotions hit her like a wave. Indignation, resentment, confusion. How dared he appear now, after almost 3 years of total absence? Her first impulse was to delete the message and block him. But something stopped her. Wasn't this exactly what she had wished for before, that Paul would acknowledge Lily? If she rejected him now, wouldn't she be depriving her daughter of the right to know her biological father? Without thinking, she picked up her phone and dialed the only number she felt she could turn to at that moment. "Evelyn?" Richard's voice sounded surprised but alert, as if he had been waiting for her call for months. "Sorry for calling so late," she began, suddenly insecure. "I didn't know who to talk to and—" "Are you all right? Is Lily all right?" he asked immediately. Yes, we're fine," she reassured him. "It's just that Paul wrote to me. He wants to meet Lily." The silence on the other end of the line lasted only a few seconds. "What are you going to do?" he finally asked, with a neutrality that contrasted with the emotional storm Evelyn could imagine behind his words. "I don't know," she confessed. "Part of me wants to tell him to go to hell, but another part thinks of Lily, of her right to have a father. Can I ask you something?" Richard said softly. "Are you calling me because you want my advice, or because you already know what you want to do and need someone to listen?" The question caught her by surprise. It was exactly the kind of question Paul would never have asked, more concerned with imposing his opinion than with understanding hers. "I think I needed someone to listen," she admitted. "Someone who knew the whole story and who cared about Lily as much as I do." "I'll always be here to listen, Evelyn," he replied, with a sincerity that broke through all her defenses. "And as for Paul, I believe people can change. Some need more time than others to mature. But if he genuinely wants to be part of Lily's life, perhaps he deserves a chance, on your terms and under your supervision." Evelyn felt something untangle in her chest. "Thank you," she murmured. "I've missed you, Richard." "I've missed you too," he replied, with a smile she could feel through the phone. "More than I can express." That late-night conversation broke the ice between them, leading to occasional messages, then more frequent calls. They talked about Lily, about the arts program, about Richard's new projects. They slowly rebuilt trust, this time on more solid foundations. 2 months after that call, Evelyn received news that would change the course of her life. Her contract in Manchester would come to an end, and the school in Sheffield, where she had previously worked, offered her a permanent position with an expanded role to develop a curriculum similar to what she had created in Manchester. It was the perfect opportunity to return home, to her hometown, to the beaches she missed so much. But it also meant moving away from Richard again, Just as their relationship was beginning to heal, Evelyn spent days considering her options, talking with Chloe, thinking about what would be best for Lily. Finally, she made her decision. She would return to Sheffield. It was best for her daughter, for her career, to establish a stable life. When she called Richard to tell him, she expected disappointment, perhaps even an attempt to convince her to stay. Instead, she received understanding. "Sheffield is your home," he said, "and it's a wonderful place to raise Lily." "But what about us?" she asked, surprised by her own boldness. Richard paused before replying. "Physical distance was never our real problem, Evelyn. And besides, Manchester isn't the only place I can be." The insinuation hung between them, loaded with possibilities. Do you think Evelyn made the right decision to return to Sheffield? What do you think Richard meant by his last statement? Share your predictions in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for the thrilling climax. A twist of fate on the flight home. 3 weeks later, with suitcases packed and plane tickets in hand, Evelyn and Lily were preparing to return to Sheffield. The arts program was in good hands, and Paul had begun supervised visits with Lily, showing a genuine interest in getting to know his daughter. Everything seemed to be moving towards a new beginning, a fresh page in her life story. The only thing left was to resolve that unfinished chapter with Richard, that maybe, that still hung between them like an unanswered question. As they boarded the plane, Evelyn felt a mix of nostalgia and hope. Manchester had been a temporary refuge, a place of growth and change. Now she was returning home, transformed, stronger, surer of who she was and what she wanted. "Madam?" The flight attendant interrupted her thoughts. "It seems there's a problem with your seat." Evelyn looked at her, confused, as she settled Lily, now almost 3 years old, into her window seat. "A problem? I have the confirmation here." "It's not that," the flight attendant explained with an enigmatic smile. "It's just that the passenger who should occupy the seat next to you has requested a change." Before Evelyn could ask what that meant, a familiar figure appeared in the aisle. "Is this seat taken?" Richard asked, pointing to the empty space next to them. Lily let out a cry of joy when she recognized him. "Uncle Richard!" she exclaimed, extending her little arms towards him. Evelyn looked at him, stunned, unable to process his presence there, on that flight, at that precise moment. "What are you doing here?" she finally managed to ask. Richard smiled as he sat next to them and greeted Lily with a hug. "Let's just say I have business in Sheffield," he replied with a special sparkle in his eyes. "In fact, I'm expanding the company with a technology education center there." "Since when?" Evelyn asked, still incredulous. "Since I found out you were going home," he confessed, looking directly into her eyes. "Some destinies can't be avoided, Evelyn. Sometimes the universe gives us second chances in the most unexpected places, like a plane." As the plane took off, carrying them towards Sheffield and an uncertain but possibility-filled future, Evelyn felt something inside her finally click into place. Perhaps it was true that some encounters were meant to happen, and that some loves, like the one beginning to blossom between them, needed time and distance to truly take root. Life had brought them together once more on a plane, closing a perfect circle. This time, however, both were ready to take the reins of their destiny. Together. Did you see that coming? What do you think this unexpected reunion on the plane means for Evelyn and Richard's future? Share your excitement and predictions in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for the heartwarming conclusion, the roots of true love. The conversation during the flight flowed with surprising naturalness, as if the months of separation had never existed. Lily, excited by Richard's presence, monopolized his attention with stories about her nursery and her new friends. "So, you're really opening a technology center in Sheffield?" Evelyn asked, when Lily finally fell asleep in her lap, taking the opportunity to address the topic hovering between them. Richard nodded, his gaze serene, fixed on her. It's a project I've had in mind for a while, but I never found the right time to implement it, he explained. Sheffield has enormous potential to become a hub for educational innovation in the north of England. What a coincidence that you decided to do it just now, Evelyn commented with a skeptical smile. There are no coincidences, only the inevitable, he replied, leaning slightly towards her. But there's something I never told you, something about our first encounter. Evelyn looked at him, intrigued. The wooden puzzle I gave Lily that day on the plane? It was mine when I was a child, Richard began, his voice taking on a more intimate tone. A gift from my grandmother, who told me to only share it with someone who was going to be important in my life. And why did you give it to Lily? Evelyn asked, feeling an inexplicable lump in her throat. Because when I saw you struggling to calm her down, with that determination in your eyes despite the tiredness, something in you reminded me of my grandmother, he confessed. That same strength, that dignity. It was a connection I couldn't explain but couldn't ignore. Evelyn was silent, processing the revelation. What she had interpreted as a simple act of kindness from a stranger turned out to be something much deeper, almost predestined. All this time, I thought you wanted to change my life with your money, she finally murmured. But in reality, I wanted to be a part of it, he completed. Money is just a tool, Evelyn. It was never the point. The plane began its descent towards Sheffield, the coastal city, spreading out beneath them bathed in the afternoon sun. The familiar landscape awakened in Evelyn a sense of returning home that went beyond the geographical. What happens now? She asked, as the plane's wheels touched the runway. That depends on you, Richard replied. But I'd like to show you something before you decide. 2 hours later, with Lily wide awake and excited, they followed Richard down a sandy path that led to a small property by the beach on the outskirts of Sheffield. It wasn't the mansion Evelyn would have expected from someone like him, but a cozy wooden house, surrounded by gardens and overlooking the ocean. What is this place? She asked as Richard opened the front door. My new home, he simply replied. Or at least, I hope so. The interior of the house welcomed them with unexpected warmth. Shelves filled with children's books, a play area with educational materials, an art space with canvases and paints, and an open kitchen where you could see the sea while cooking. It was as if someone had materialized the perfect home Evelyn had always dreamed of. When did you do all this? She asked, watching in amazement the details that had clearly been chosen with them in mind. I've come several times in these months, Richard admitted. I wanted to create a space that reflected everything I value: education, creativity, connection with nature, everything you taught me to appreciate. As they spoke, Lily had discovered the back door leading to a small garden where some plants and an allotment were already in their early stages. Mom, plants like in the big garden, she exclaimed excitedly, remembering the day in the community garden. Richard approached Evelyn, gently taking her hands in his. I don't want to be a billionaire in your eyes, he said in a firm but soft voice. I want to be the man who plants seeds with you, who helps Lily grow, who builds a life measured in moments, not in money. Evelyn felt the barriers she had built around her heart finally crumble. This man, who could have anything, had created a home thinking of them, not a palace to impress her. During a flight, a humble nurse trusted a stranger, unaware he was a billionaire, destined to love her. Richard murmured, echoing the words that now described their journey together. The billionaire part was never important, Evelyn replied, taking a step towards him. It was fate that mattered. Under the warm Sheffield sunset, surrounded by the promise of new beginnings, their lips met in a kiss that transcended all differences, healing past wounds and celebrating the family they had become. proof that sometimes the person sitting next to you on an aeroplane might be exactly the one you've been waiting for your whole life. In the garden, Lily jumped among the newly planted seedlings, a symbol of the roots the three of them were putting down together in this new chapter of their lives. What a beautiful moment of connection. What does this new home symbolize for Evelyn and Richard? Share your hopes and emotions in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for the heartwarming finale. A love that grows and heals. 5 years have passed since that return flight that reunited Evelyn and Richard. The small house by the beach has grown, not in ostentation, but in life and purpose. What began as a modest garden has now expanded to include an educational center where children from the community learn coding alongside arts and traditional education. Evelyn, now Regional Director of Curriculum Development, has created a program that combines technology with creative expression, nationally recognized for its innovative approach. Her methods are being implemented in public schools across the north of England, transforming how children learn and engage with education. Richard reoriented Nova Horizon Technologies to focus primarily on educational equity projects. Although he maintains his offices in Manchester, he spends most of his time in Sheffield, where he can work while watching the ocean and return home every evening to be with his family. Lily, now 8 years old, is a bright and confident child who talks with equal ease about coding and her latest artistic creations. To everyone's surprise, Paul has become a more responsible presence in her life, visiting regularly and forming a relationship that, while never full-time fatherhood, gives her another perspective and connection to her roots. The family has grown with the arrival of 3-year-old twins, Arthur and Chloe, who fill the house with laughter and mischief. Seeing Richard with his children, patient and present in a way her own father never was, confirms for Evelyn that people can break cycles of abandonment and create new patterns of love. On the anniversary of their first flight together, Richard surprises Evelyn with plane tickets, but not for a luxury holiday, as she might have expected. "We're flying to London," he explains, while they have breakfast on the terrace with the sound of the sea in the background. "But not as ordinary passengers." "What do you mean?" "We're joining a volunteer program that helps families traveling with young children." He smiles. "I thought it was time to give back some of the magic that fate gave us." That afternoon, as they pack their bags, Lily appears with the old wooden puzzle, now somewhat worn from constant use. "Can we take it, Daddy?" she asks, calling Richard as she has since he and Evelyn married 3 years ago. "To give it to other children on the plane?" Evelyn exchanges a knowing look with Richard. The puzzle, which once served as a bridge between two strangers, will now continue its journey, perhaps helping to create new, unexpected connections. As they board the plane, Lily proudly displays her junior flight attendant pin. The twins walk hand in hand between their parents, and Evelyn intertwines her fingers with Richard's, reminding herself that the most important journeys aren't about the destination, but about who sits next to you on the way. And perhaps somewhere on that plane, another single mother is struggling with a restless child, unaware that the person in the adjacent seat could change her life forever. Because that's how destiny works, repeating its magical patterns for those willing to trust strangers and take a leap of faith into the unknown. What an incredible, fulfilling journey. What part of Evelyn and Richard's story inspired you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more heartwarming, true-to-life narratives. A Forever Home. 2 years after the wedding, the afternoon sun streamed through the windows of their new house in Hampstead, illuminating a scene that would have seemed impossible just 3 years ago. Evelyn, 6 months pregnant, was sitting on the living room sofa reviewing the schedules for her new position as a day-shift nursing supervisor, a job Richard had helped negotiate so she could spend more time at home. "Mummy Evie, will you help me with my school presentation?" asked Lily, now 10 years old, running towards her with a large piece of cardstock. "Of course, my love. What's it about?" "I have to talk about non-traditional families. The teacher said I could talk about ours." Evelyn smiled. Lily had started calling her Mummy Evie on her own initiative, a way to honor both her biological mother and Evelyn. Mummy Caroline lived in her heart and memories, while Mummy Evie was the one who cared for her day by day. "And what are you going to say?" "That my family started when Daddy met Mummy Caroline. That then Mummy went to heaven. And that then you arrived with a wrong phone call. And that now we're a different family, but very happy." "That sounds perfect, Lily." Richard appeared from his home office, a setup he'd made to work remotely most of the time. His company had not only survived the crisis, but had prospered thanks to a new line of ecological products they had developed. "How are my two favorite ladies?" he asked, kissing Evelyn's forehead and ruffling Lily's hair. "3 ladies," Lily corrected, pointing to Evelyn's belly. "My little sister counts too." "You're right. How's little Hope today?" They had decided to name the baby Hope in honor of Evelyn's grandmother from Sheffield, who now lived in a small but comfortable flat just 10 blocks away. The older woman had insisted on maintaining her independence, but dined with them at least 3 times a week and was a constant presence in their lives. "Very active. She doesn't stop moving," Evelyn replied, caressing her belly. "She must be excited to meet her big sister," Richard said, sitting next to them. The doorbell rang, and Lily ran to open it. It was Hope, carrying a basket of freshly baked pastries. "Grandma Hope!" Lily shrieked, hugging her tightly. "Hello, my beautiful granddaughter. How's my favorite great-granddaughter?" she asked, addressing Evelyn's belly. "Your only great-granddaughter, Mom," Evelyn laughed. "For now," Hope replied with a wink. "These two are too young to only have 2 daughters." The afternoon passed in the familiar routine they had built together. Lily finished her presentation, with everyone's help. Richard prepared dinner while Evelyn rested, and Hope told them stories from Sheffield that kept the family's roots alive. After dinner, as was tradition, they went out to the garden. In the center of the patio was the tree they had planted the day after returning from their honeymoon in the Scottish Highlands, a jacaranda that had already grown considerably and that bloomed every spring, filling the garden with purple flowers. "Do you remember when we planted this tree?" Richard asked, with Lily sitting on his shoulders. "I was very little," Lily said, "but I remember you said it would grow with me. And it's grown a lot, just like you," Evelyn added. As they gazed at the tree under the golden light of the sunset, Evelyn reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. Lily's maternal grandparents, Mr. and Mrs. Evans, visited Lily every 2 weeks. And although the first visits had been tense, they had gradually learned to value their granddaughter's happiness above their own expectations. Richard's sister, Catherine, had become Lily's favorite aunt and Evelyn's best friend, an alliance no one had seen coming, but one that worked perfectly. She had even started dating one of the doctors from the hospital where Evelyn worked, a relationship everyone followed with amused interest. "Daddy?" Lily said suddenly. "Can I tell you a secret?" "Of course, Princess. Sometimes I talk to Mummy Caroline about Mummy Evie and about the baby, and I think she's happy." Richard felt a lump in his throat. "Do you think so?" "Yes, because before she died, she told me the most important thing was that I be happy. And I am very happy." Evelyn reached out to Lily, who climbed down from her father's shoulders, to sit between them on the garden bench. "Do you know what I love most about our family?" Evelyn asked. "What?" father and daughter asked in unison. "That we found each other when we needed it most, without even knowing it." "Like in fairy tales?" Lily said. "Better than in fairy tales," Richard corrected, "because this is real." As the sun finally set, the 3 remained sitting there, with Hope watching them from the kitchen window, finishing the dishes, smiling as she saw her daughter so happy. Little Hope stirred in Evelyn's belly, as if she also wanted to be part of the family moment. In a few more months, there would be 4 of them. And after that, well, as Granny Hope had said, they were young and had a lot of love to give. Evelyn remembered that early morning 3 years ago, when she answered a wrong number that changed her life forever. She never imagined that a desperate man looking for a nanny would become her husband, that a sad little girl would become her adopted daughter, and that a lonely flat would transform into a home filled with laughter, shared tears, and unconditional love. Sometimes, the best things in life arrive when you least expect them, disguised as problems that need solving. Sometimes, a wrong call is exactly the right call. And sometimes, true love not only finds a way to triumph, but flourishes like a jacaranda in spring, filling an entire life with color and beauty. As Lily fell asleep between her parents, under the first stars of the night, and little Hope settled peacefully in her mother's womb, the family that had begun with a wrong call at 5 in the morning knew they had found something not everyone is lucky enough to experience. A love that heals, that builds, and that lasts forever. The perfect ending to a story that had begun with the sound of a phone in the early hours, and that would continue to be written every day, with every shared laugh, every comforted tear, and every moment of ordinary happiness that, in reality, was absolutely extraordinary. What an incredibly heartwarming conclusion. What part of Evelyn and Richard's journey touched you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more truly inspiring narratives.